Hey, what is going on, you shivering Shinx? Coming at you with my complete set review of Paldea Evolved here today. Not actually complete, I'm not going to go over every single card, just all the cards that I think are relevant, potentially for competitive play. And I might still come at you with the top 10 list as well, top 10 list video later next week. But we are pretty close to Paldea Evolved being released about a week and a half away, week and a couple days away, 9 days away, about 9 days away. I'm not going to do the math right now, but we're really close to Paldea Evolved being released, and I'm pretty excited for some new cards. Definitely excited for things to be switched up a little bit. I'm sure you guys are as well. And if you do need any Paldea Evolved products, be sure to go over to fullgripgames.com. They got sealed products, booster boxes, ETBs, stuff like that, and the singles are available for pre-order as well right now, which I'm sure a lot more of you competitive players are a little bit more excited for. So go over to fullgripgames.com. A link will be in the description, of course. And yeah, anything you do and buy over there directly supports me here on the YouTube channel, the Twitch stream, and everything like that. So I appreciate it. Go check them out, fullgripgames.com. Get your Paldea Evolved products today. And with that said, let's go ahead, let's jump right in it. And there's a hop up here, but hop up is not the first card we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about that Fortress EX. I'm actually pretty excited for this one. We've had quite a few abilities like this a Fortress has in the past, but they've never been guarantees for the most part. It's always been like, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, top 7 cards of your deck, take any energy you find there and put them into play. But the Fortress knocks itself out with its ability, and you can search your deck for 5 basic grass energy and then attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. So you can get kind of more guaranteed strategies off out of this Fortress EX than some of the cards that we've seen with similar abilities in the past. Actually, that's not 100% true. The Electrode that knocked itself out and search your deck for 2 lightning energy was also a guaranteed effect. I guess I'm thinking a little bit older to like Electrode EX, Electrode G. I don't remember what it was, to be honest. It was some Electrode that knocked itself out. You look at the top 7. Anyways, talking more about this Fortress, I'm excited for this one. I think it brings a cool new way to kind of deck build around with this energy acceleration. But not only that, you are knocking yourself out, which means you're giving your opponent prize cards, which allows you to get aggressive with stuff like Roxanne and Iona that also comes out in this set. So Fortress, we haven't been see a lot of success anywhere quite yet, and I do feel like we might have to wait a little bit for Fortress to kind of have its moment. We might be a rotation or 2 away from Fortress having its moment, but I think it's a very powerful ability. 5 basic grass energy coming into play is a pretty big deal, and then we have disruption cards like Roxanne, like Iona to kind of combo with that after your opponent gets those prize cards. You know, take those away from them immediately and shuffle them down to like a 3-card, 2-card, 4-card hand, whatever. I think there's a lot of potential for this card in the future, so I'm excited for the Fortress. Love this kind of style of play of, you know, giving your opponent a little bit to take more away from them. It's got the guard press attack as well, which is actually pretty solid for 2 grass energy, 120. And then during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attack. So I was like theorizing this could be a pretty good attacker actually up against like Lost Box. 270 HP as a 2-prize Pokemon, 120 for 2 grass, and you take a little bit less damage. Of course, that's only going to matter if they're hitting with like Cramorant, but still, I guess even if they hit you with something like a Dragonite, that could also make a difference in how quickly they actually KO Fortress. So not a terrible attack up against some kind of Lost Box type deck as well. Then we go on to the Meowskarada, which I was pretty hyped for this card. I mean, a double colorless attack when we have double turbo energy in the format, and it's got 310 HP. Like, things were looking pretty good for this, but once again, it's another card we haven't seen really anything out of Japan or Taiwan who have had these cards for a little while. Haven't seen any Meowskaradas popping up in the top placements of their tournaments. But once again, it feels like really good stats on this card. Feels like, once again, we might just have to wait for a rotation or 2 to happen before Meowskarada can kind of come online and be viable in the meta. But like I said, 310 HP. It's got the Magic Bouquet ability. You may discard a grass energy from your hand in order to use this ability. Once on your turn, you may choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, put 3 damage counters on it. And then for 2 colorless, like I mentioned, works with that double turbo energy. 100 damage. If your opponent's active Pokemon already has any damage counters on it, you're doing another 120 damage. So looking at like 200 most of the time, probably, because you're going to be using that double turbo energy to attack with this. But that's not too bad. 200 damage is still pretty good, especially when you're building up those 30s with the Magic Bouquet. And you could theoretically have 2, 3, 4 Meowskarada in play, taking advantage of their abilities. That's a lot of extra damage being put into play turn to turn, and with 310 HP, you're not getting 1-hit KO'd anytime soon. So like I said, the stats on this are like really good. We have double turbo energy. Maybe it's just not right for it yet, but yeah, like I said, a rotation or 2 from now, I have a feeling something like this has got to be good. The stats are just so good on this thing. I don't know, especially when you have like superior energy retrieval to combo with the ability as well. That's a lot of extra damage coming in through the ability. So once again, another one that I really like with the way the card works, but I think we are a rotation or two away on that one as well, unfortunately. So a lot of the cards, I feel like that's how they kind of are in this set, though. Another one that feels like that because it does combo with Fortress is the Uchian EX, 230 HP. The Devouring Ivy for Grass Color, 60 damage for each prize card your opponent has taken to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So I can build up pretty fast when you combo that with Fortress. Your opponent takes a 2-prize knockout. You use your Fortress, they take in 4 prizes. You're doing 240 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. That's not quite in the getting the KO numbers we're looking for. That's a little bit short on that. And then we got the Forest Burn for Grass Color, so 4 energy, but not too difficult to set up turn 2 when you're comboing it once again with that Fortress EX. You're taking the knockout mainly on those big V Pokemon would be the reason this hits hard enough. But once again, haven't been seeing that success from this deck. The Fortress, you'd be definitely playing this with Fortress, Uchian Fortress combo type deck over in Japan yet. We haven't been seeing anything from that combo yet, and this definitely feels like a card that kind of falls off quite a bit once kind of the V Pokemon starts to rotate out of the format. So whereas Fortress might be good once we see the V Pokemon rotate out, I feel like the Uchian is going to be strong as well. The V Pokemon are still here, that 220 on the Forest Burn, and then the Devouring Ivy doing 60 for each prize card your opponent's taken. You know, once we get to like these big EX Pokemon with 300 plus HP, Devouring Ivy is not going to be really one-hit KOing anything. It can kind of chase down some V Pokemon right now, but once we lose them all, you're not going to be one-hit KOing those big EX Pokemon. So I think the time for Uchian is right now, but even with Fortress with it, it doesn't feel like it quite does enough. Moving right along here, go ahead and take a look at the Oricorio. Very interesting tech Pokemon. Definitely gonna want to pick 1 or 2 of these up to have around, because I definitely think this card will see a moment where it's in like a top tier 1, tier 2 deck. It's a basic Pokemon with the Passionate Dance ability. Once in your turn, heal 20 damage from your active evolution Pokemon. So, I mean, that's just like pretty good. You never know, kind of weird spread decks or just weird situations where like healing a little bit of damage is going to make a big difference. You never know when like some weird 2-hit KO numbers kind of line up in a certain matchup, and it's just enough to get a knockout on one of your Pokemon, and all of a sudden Oricorio can take a matchup from being like unfavorable to favorable all of a sudden. So this is definitely one of those Pokemon you just want to keep in the binder just to have around as a tech card, because you never know when something like this could be good. So make sure you pick up your Oricorio. The Skeledirge EX, once again, stats are looking really good. 2 fire energy doing 207 damage, minus 10 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. We got the Magma Basin, we got the Armor Rouge, and we got a bunch of different things you could combo with this with as far as fire Pokemon go. 340 HP that's a lot. And once again, it's just like another one of those where it's like it feels like we need a rotation or 2 to hit to kind of remove some of these more aggressive V Pokemon. Stuff like the Lost Box can be tough to deal with as well with these bigger evolution decks. So, but the stats are just so good. Once again, I like this card, but it's hard for me to be like, yeah, I think this deck is going to be good enough on release. Once again, haven't seen anything from it in Japan. They've had these cards for a little while, so it doesn't bode well for it on release, but still a fan of what's going on here. And you can definitely get some 2-hit KO combos here between the Burning Voice into the Vitality Song, 50 damage, heal 30 damage from each of your Pokemon. Combo that with Magma Basin. Once again, you're putting energy in play, you're taking damage, you're healing the damage off, you're doing the 50 damage into the 270 for a good old 1-2 punch. Man, I don't know, I just like what's going on with the card, but I don't think it's going to be enough off the rip. Also, of course, one of the cards we're going to come into here in just a second, Chien Pao. Definitely seems like it's pretty strong, and it is water type, which doesn't bode well for the Skeledirge. So, is that how you say it? Skeledirge? Skeledirge? I think so. I think I got that one right, actually. I don't usually get them right, but I think I got that one right. And of course, now we're coming up on the, not the Quaxley, coming up on the Baxcalibur and the Chien Pao. So this is probably the most hyped cards coming out of this set as far as viable competitive decks go. I'm not sold. I think it will be a tier 2, tier 3 deck for sure. It's going to fall in that range probably pretty consistently throughout the Paldea Evolved meta, but I don't know if it'll ever be able to push for that tier 1 spot alongside some of the bigger hitters like the Lost Boxes and the Guardians. So we got the Baxcalibur, of course, 160 HP, stage 2. Soften you select during your turn, you may attach a basic water energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So a lot of, just energy acceleration, just basically freebie energy acceleration. You got the energy, it's going into play. It doesn't have to be on water Pokemon, but of course, if it's water energy, it probably combos best with water Pokemon. And one of the best cards we're going to be getting from the set is the Chien Pao EX. The ability, Trembling Cold, search your deck for 2 basic water energy and put them to your hand. That's pretty good when you combo with the Baxcalibur that can then put those water energy in play for you. And then we see the Hail Blizzard for water, 60 times the amount of energy you discard from your Pokemon in play. So you get the energy out of the deck with the Chien Pao, you get it into play with the Baxcalibur, and then you one-hit KO anything. Now, the problem that I kind of see with this deck is it feels like Miraidon 2.0, except you can't attack turn 1 for the trade-off of having some more options and versatility through comboing this with like Paldea EX and Radiant Greninja. So you got some more options there as far as attackers go. And especially Radiant Greninja's attack can be super powerful in situations really pressuring your opponent to like finding their Manaphy or playing a little bit awkwardly, stuff like that. So a little bit more options than something like Miraidon at the trade-off of not really attacking turn 1. But at the end of the day, it does kind of feel like another just kind of 2-prize beat stick type deck. So I'm not sold on Chien-Pao going to be able to keep up with the big dogs. It might come up a little bit short and fall into that kind of Miraidon tier type deck, at least initially. Very powerful card. The ability's insane. Obviously, the support of Excalibur, Palkia, all this stuff. You got a lot of support. But I feel like in the meta currently, it's not going to be able to really thrive like it might be able to if the meta was a little bit different. Shinx, the Shinx is actually really cool. 40 HP, 1 retreat cost, but it's that ability what it's all about. Once your turn, if this Pokemon is in your active spot, you may have your opponent switch their active Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon. So we've had a card like this in the past. It was a Manaphy or a Fion. Basically, if it was in the active, your opponent switched their Pokemon and you put it to the bottom of your deck, or you shuffle it into your deck. I forget which one exactly it was, but pretty cool card. I think there's definitely some potential for this Shinx in the future. Once again, kind of like that Oricorio. Pick it up. It's a cool tech card to have around as a 1 of or a 2 of. You never know when you're going to randomly run into a matchup where making your opponent's active Pokemon switch to the bench turn over turn over turn over turn is going to be pretty powerful. So Shinx, make sure you pick one of your Shinx up. And we will be using it for that effect, but we're not going to be using it to get into the Luxray. Well, I guess you could, but you probably won't be doing that. They'll probably be in separate decks. I guess you could play them both in the same deck, but you probably are not making your Shinx a Luxray. That's because Luxray can be put into play by itself through that overflowing Ray ability. Once your turn, if this Pokemon is in your hand and you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, you may play this card onto your bench. That's right, you can literally just take it and slap it on your bench. And it's got that Wild Charge attack for the Lightning Double Colors for 180. This Pokemon does 20 damage to itself. So it's only got 150 HP, so the 20 damage to yourself isn't really too detrimental because, I mean, you're getting knocked out no matter what, right? But the Wild Charge combos really well with Reversal Energy, which comes out in this set, which says if you're behind on prize cards, it counts as 3 Rainbow Energy for evolution Pokemon, which Luxray is an evolution Pokemon. It's not an evolved Pokemon, but it doesn't get classified like that on the Reversal Energy. So put this in play in 1 turn, attach the Reversal Energy, and you're swinging for 180. The biggest thing here is that you're Lightning type. So we've been seeing this being played in like Lugia decks, Guardy decks, stuff that can easily get Reversal Energy into play or already kind of plays them. Guardy already plays Reversal Energy, so you can throw a Luxray in there pretty reasonably. And then the Lugia deck can really easily get the Reversal Energy into play. And you can just search out the Luxray with an Ultra Ball when you're behind, and you're swinging for 180 with a 1 prize Pokemon, which can be pretty convenient, especially if you go up against other Lugia decks. Specifically, Lugia is weak to Lightning, of course, so that's a pretty easy 2 prize cards. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. All right, we'll continue on. So yeah, the Luxray is really cool, and it's already seen like a ton of play in a ton of top decks. So I expect that to maintain and continue to be a viable card throughout the meta. As long as Reversal Energy is played in decks, I think we'll see Luxray being played in decks as well. Moving on, did want to mention the Wigglytuff real fast. Probably not going to be great off the rip, but Wigglytuff EX will be coming out in the 151 set. When did we get that? Who knows? If you know, let me know, because I have no clue. But Wigglytuff with the Balloon Therapy ability. Once on your turn, you may attach a Therapy Energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So, oh, is it from your hand? I thought it was from your deck. From your hand does not make this quite as good as I thought it was before, but still got some potential. I feel like the first time I read this translation, it was from your deck, not your hand. With the Wigglytuff EX deck, I think this is still definitely got some potential, but I was kind of thinking this could be good in terms of other decks. But now that it's from hand, I don't think it's going to be quite as good as some potential energy acceleration in some other decks where there's like a little bit energy short turn to turn, and this kind of gets them there through the Balloon Therapy. Yeah, I'm going to make a prediction this is probably only going to be good with Wigglytuff EX. I can still see it being good with Wigglytuff EX, though, despite the from hand to one of your Pokemon. Yeah, last time I read this, I swear it was from your deck, but maybe that'd be too good. That wouldn't be too good. There's no way that's too good. The Spiritomb, Pokemon loves to print broken cards like Mew VMAX, and then loves to have to deal with having to deal with them being so good and being so hard to get rid of. We've seen the Drapion V, we've seen the Mightyena, and now we have the Spiritomb, the Pitch Black Doom ability. As long as this Pokemon is in play, bench active doesn't matter. Basic Pokemon V have no abilities. That's Genesect V with no ability off the rip. You can start, go first, put it in play, and all of a sudden your opponent can't use their Genesects off the rip. Now we have seen that the Mew decks are trying to adapt to that by going full fusion, because if you put a fusion energy on your Genesect, I guess this is maybe why fusion energy was printed the way it was. They're already The creators of the game were like, so far in the future, they're like, we're gonna need to counter Mew in the future, but we don't want to fully counter Mew. So we're gonna create fusion energy that plays around your opponent's abilities, because we're gonna print Spiritomb at some point, and we want Mew to still have a chance no matter what. So Spiritomb comes into play, touch off the Genesect. You also sparkle, you attach to a Genesect. All of a sudden, your Genesects are back online. So Mew, definitely not dead to Spiritomb. We've still seen it being placing pretty decently in Japanese tournaments. So Spiritomb doesn't quite get Mew all the way out of the meta, push it all the way out of the meta. It's still around, just barely hanging on at this point. I think Spiritomb basically gets rid of it. Like, I don't think Mew's going to be like quite as top of a deck as we've seen recently in the meta. It'll probably be like a tier 3, tier 4 deck consistently as long as Spiritomb's around. But it does kind of leave those possibilities open throughout the meta, where it's like no one's playing Spiritomb because no one's playing Mew, and then that's the time to strike with Mew. Definitely see those kind of situations pop up throughout the meta for sure. So the Spiritomb, not the final nail in the coffin for Mew, but another one for sure. But I guess we're not there quite yet. Also, this is still pretty strong up against other decks. It's good against Guardy. Guardy does like to use Zacian, and they like to use Luminion. And then also Lugia as well is a pretty Luminion heavy utilizing deck. So Spiritomb isn't just good against the Mew, does have some other uses in some other matchups as well. So it's not quite a dead card in every other matchup. It's just not going to be quite as good as it is up against the Mew. The Mimikyu basic Pokemon with the Safeguard. That's right, Safeguard is back. It only has 70 HP, so they've been lowering the HP on these. We had Decidueye that had like 140. Of course, that's a stage 2. We had the Miltank with the 110. That was a basic. Another basic Safeguarder, but only 70 HP. That's pretty soft. Prevent all damage onto this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX and Pokemon V. Right now, most V decks, we also have Lost Box. I think Mimikyu needs a couple rotations. I think it needs the meta to be basically just EX Pokemon for it really to have its moment to kind of come out of nowhere and catch everyone by surprise and be like, oh yeah, that's a card and I can't KO because I only play EXs in my deck, or my basics in stage 1s don't do quite enough damage to overpower the Mimikyu and I lose. So I think there is gonna be a time for Mimikyu, but I think we're like 2 rotations away. I think V Pokemon maybe 1 rotation away, but we still have Lost Box stuff after 1 rotation if I'm not mistaken. So I think we're 2 rotations away from Mimikyu kind of having its moment, but I think it will have its moment. I would not sleep on Mimikyu, but we're gonna be a couple years away from it having its moment. But it'll come, you mark my words. If it's not any of you who are doing it, I'm gonna be taking advantage of the Mimikyu at some point myself. So yeah, remember it exists when the meta feels just right and it feels like no one really has an answer to the Mimikyu. The Tingloo EX, I don't really want to call it overhyped because I don't think anyone was really hyping up this to be the next BDIF broken deck, but I think a lot of people were hoping for a little bit more from this thing, but I think it's just a little bit too awkward. Of course, we only have the results from Japan to work with as of right now. The rest of the world really hasn't gotten their hands on the cards to kind of cook, and that is sometimes the difference maker. Is just like sometimes it just one region isn't able to break a deck like another is. It's just kind of you need more hands on the cards to actually fully flesh out all the ideas and everything like that. So Tingloo definitely could be a little bit better than I personally give it credit for. I don't think it's great. It's got the 240 HP, the Cursed Ground ability. If this Pokemon is in your active spot, your opponent's active Pokemon, your opponent's Pokemon with damage counters on them have no abilities, excluding Pokemon EX. But you can shut down quite a bit with this. And then it has the Land Scoop attack for fighting. 150, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Of course, you're going to be playing like 4 of these to get one of the active as soon as possible. Probably going to play this alongside the Koraidon EX to accelerate fighting energy into play on the first turn. And the Squawk ability, which we'll talk about in a little bit, helps you really aggressively draw cards and discard cards. Be able to set up for like a turn 1 Koraidon energy acceleration, hopefully into a turn 2 Land Scoop, and you can play this alongside the Hawlucha that places damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon to early game set up to start locking down your opponent's abilities. You can throw this stuff on stuff like Genesect, Ralt, so when they evolve to Curlia they don't have abilities. You can throw it on Lugia V, so they can't use the Summoning Star, and even if they do get a Summoning Star off and get the Archeops in play, you can then put damage on the Archeops to stop the Archeops from being able to accelerate energy into play. So theoretically, there is ways to maneuver it, but triple fighting energy to attack is horrendous. That is like rough right now. There's nothing we can really do to accelerate fighting energy into play consistently besides Koraidon, but that is still relying on a pretty decent turn 1 playthrough to actually get to the energy into the discard pile and then into play and yada yada yada. It's not looking good for Tingloo. I don't think this one is it. I think it's like a tier 5 deck. If we had like 5 tiers in a tier list, it'd be tier 5, I think. Pretty much for sure. I'm not holding out much hope for the Tingloo, but I hope I'm wrong. One card that I hope I'm right about is actually the Kappa Raja the Kappa Raja EX, 300 HP, bronze body. This Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. And then for metal cost 260 damage. You do 30 to each of your bench Pokemon, so that's not great, but effective 330 HP on an EX, or on a stage 1. It is an EX. It only gives up 2 prize cards. That's a lot of HP. 260 damage, that's a lot of damage. I kind of talked about this with the Wigglytuff EX in a video recently, going over some 151 cards. Once the stats get high enough, it doesn't matter if the card doesn't have like any broken things like trading or a lot of draw power. Like sometimes the stats are just so high, it's just like it doesn't matter. It can't be KO'd, and it's KO and everything. Like it doesn't matter if it doesn't have like some broken draw engine or anything like that. It just does a lot of damage and has a lot of HP. Now, obviously, like initially, Gardevoir is going to be a problem for this deck because Gardevoir with Zacian is going to knock you out, and that's not great. Maybe you could play around that a little bit with something like a Medicham, or I don't know, like Halucha Pings, or Alakazam could get involved. I don't know. Maybe you can like kind of play around that Panic Mask, the other one, the Disaster Box. You can play that in here as well. Maybe there's enough tools to get the Kappa Raja around the Guardian, because that seems like the tough thing to potentially deal with. But I don't know. I think this card is really cool. That's a lot of HP. And even if initially, because once again, it feels like, it's got the stats to back it up. Maybe initially it's not going to be great. A rotation or two from now, which is a while away from before we'd have that potential. And who knows? Maybe they'll just keep upping the ante, and every next set from here on out just has a new broken Pokemon, and all of these older EXs never really have a time to shine because they don't kind of slow down the power creep enough to give them a chance to shine before rotations hit, and then, they'll never get their moment. But I'm hoping they get their moment. I really am. I'm really hoping cards like the Kappa Raja, Skeledirge, stuff like that, the Meowskarada will get their moment. But definitely gonna have to wait a little bit. The Dunsparce. This card is super cool. It's got that sudden flash attack for colorless. Your opponent's active is now paralyzed. Shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. So this card is potentially going to make a really cool Lugia deck. You go Lugia and Archeops, get your Archeops in play. You're going to play a lot of double turbos. And basically the goal of this deck is to just trap your opponent's active Pokemon in the active infinitely. With a sudden flash, you can paralyze your opponent's active Pokemon and then shuffle it back to the deck. And with double turbos, you can control how much damage sudden flash does, ideally leaving your opponent's active Pokemon with 20 HP remaining, allowing you to Medicham loop it and then repeat the process after that. Medicham loop it, they send up a new Pokemon, and if they could get out of the paralysis through evolving it, you could boss around it. If it's just another Pokemon you can trap in the active with Dunsparce, you just go back into the Dunsparce, go back into the sudden flash, and just keep sudden flashing again over and over and over again. Lock it in the active, go back into the Medicham. Medicham loops their active, you get another turn, and you repeat the process. Could be a really cool combo deck. I'm excited to try it out for sure. Of course, the Lost Box matchup, probably not going to be great, but maybe Lost Box won't be as relevant with Iona in the format. Who knows? But yeah, the Dunsparce, Lugia, Archeops could be pretty sick. I thought I missed the card up there that I wanted to talk about, but I don't think there is. Yeah, we're not talking about everything. I did title this complete, Paldea Evolved set review, but obviously just of the good cards. I'm not going to talk about, Mousehold. Let's talk about Squawkabilly, though. This card is super powerful. Definitely a very powerful card. I haven't seen a ton of it in Japan. Once again, I'm kind of using that as a little bit of a reference point for competitive play. Squawkabilly EX, 160 HP. On your first turn of the game, you may discard your hand and draw 6 cards. You can't use more than 1 lively draw ability during your turn. So only on the first turn can you do this. But it's at any point, and that's what makes it super powerful, is you can do something like Nest Ball for Squawkabilly, then play Judge, and then after you Judge, use Squawkabilly's lively draw ability to draw a bunch of cards, which is that's just good. That's really good. That's really powerful. Great option. Kind of like the Dene, similar to kind of like the Dene, but a little bit more limited. I do like that they limited it quite a bit. Only 1 lively draw and only on the first turn of the game. I do like that they limited it quite a bit. The Dene was kind of out of hand with how powerful it was when it was around. So definitely dig the limitation here on how good the Squawkabilly is. And it's got a pretty good attack too. For a colorless energy, 20 damage attachment to 2 basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon. So a little bit of an energy acceleration, a little bit of draw and consistency can be found off something like Nest Ball and then draw cards, which is really a big deal. Something that Luminion can't do. If you Nest Ball for a Luminion, you're going to be like, why did I misplay like that? And then you fully regret it, right? But you Nest Ball for Squawkabilly and you're drawing 6 cards. That's pretty cool. Also, like I said, can conserve it before you use your research, your judge, whatever it might be, draw afterwards, which can be a pretty big deal. So definitely think it's a super powerful card. The Squawkabilly is definitely powerful. we'll definitely see play. That's kind of the question. Artisan Stadium card. This has actually been seeing decent amount of play in Japan. Once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for one basic Pokemon, play it onto their bench, and then shuffle their deck. So a more Pokemon search through a stadium here. Now this card is one of the, it's a very powerful stadium, but it's one of the biggest, the stadium is one of the biggest drawbacks because you give it to your opponent. You put this in play to go search for a basic Pokemon for yourself. You're giving it to your opponent to search for a basic Pokemon for themselves, which is just like, I mean, that's a lot to give your opponent, to be honest. Like that's a lot to like, you get a lot out of it, but it's a lot to give your opponent. Should you be playing this, or should you be playing more Nest Balls, more Ultra Balls, stuff like that? That's kind of the question. But we've seen a decent amount of these pop up in Guardy decks, Lost Zone decks. Been seeing a decent amount of play over in Japan. So they seem to think that it's worth giving it to your opponent to get the value out of it yourself. I'm not sold on this thing being worth playing yet. Definitely very powerful to potentially utilize, but I'm not trying to let my opponent draw or play basic Pokemon for free. I'm not trying to, I don't like that. Brave Charm, basic Pokemon, this card is attached to, gets plus 50 HP, super powerful card. Definitely expected to see a decent amount of play for sure. If not right now, for the way the meta is, like I don't think you're playing this in Lost Box. I don't think you're playing it in Uchian Pal, probably. Definitely not playing it in Guardy, like or Lugia. Current meta, probably not seeing a ton of play out of it, but this is just an insane plus 50 HP. That's a lot of HP. Like, what are you going to do with that much HP? That's insane. Plus 50, that's crazy. Of course, only on basic Pokemon, but I think it's a fair limiting factor for not broken, how powerful this card is. I almost said broken. I caught myself there. It's not broken. Very powerful card, though. We had it in Keep of Toughness format or two ago. Calamity, Snowy Mountain. Whenever any player attaches an energy from their hand to one of their basic Pokemon, or basic non-water Pokemon, excuse me, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. Reactive Stadiums. There might be something cool to abuse with this in the future, something like a Spiritomb that we kind of saw in the past with building Spite, but right now I don't think of anything too good of a combo. There are some Pokemon out there that they like damage on themselves, but nothing good enough, I think, to warrant the Calamitous Snowy Mountain being good. And of course, passive stadiums like this, where you give your opponent an opportunity to play around it, or play into it, or get rid of it before they would ever attach an energy for turn, are generally just not very good. So yeah, Calamitous Snowy Mountain, kind of a dud. Calamitous Wasteland, retreat cost of each basic Pokemon except fire Pokemon is colorless more. Definitely just kind of a control card, to be honest. Like, this is a control card. Every kind of stadium that we've seen in the past, there was like a Team Aqua Stadium in the past that did this. Galar Mine was a +2 to Pokemon. Galar Mine was +2 to everything. This thing is like a way more limited card than Galar Mine. The retreat cost of each basic Pokemon except fire Pokemon is colorless more. That's like such a bigger limiting factor than, or less limiting factor, more restrictions on it than Galar Mine. Galar Mine was just +2 to everything. Kind of insane. But Calamitous Wasteland, it's just a control card. I don't think you're going to see this much played in anything else besides some kind of control deck that's trying to trap something in the active. But it will help for that. I'm not against control cards existing, but not a very powerful one when you compare it to something like the Galar Mine. Choice Belt is back in a new artwork. Not really going to say anything here. Plus 30 damage to your opponent's V Pokemon. Good card. And it has the updated, of course, Pokemon tool text on it. It's purple now. Love to see it. Clavel, search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon that have 120 or less HP and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Once again, this feels like if the format actually does slow down in a rotation or two for now, I've said that a lot in this video, in a rotation or two from now, this could be a good card. If the power creep just kind of plateaus for a while, something like this could be good as a setup card in some of these stage 2 decks, but that is what we'd have to see happen. We would definitely have to see the power creep plateau for like a year or two, get these V Pokemon out of here, get these Lost Zone Pokemon out here, and then maybe something like the Clavel could see some play. Delivery Drone. I mean, if your deck is Ultra Turbo, then this is the card for you. Flip 2 coins. If both are heads, search your deck for any one card and put it into your hand. If you do, then shuffle your deck. But you got to be Turbo if you're going to play this card. There's only the turboest of decks would ever consider playing this card. So otherwise, to be honest, though, I could see this in Mew. You want to see a lot of cards, you want to play a lot of cards so you can draw more cards with your Genesect. Why not add a little bit of RNG to your Crams and add some Delivery Drones? I could see this in Mew. I'm not gonna lie, I could see it. Probably not. Your deck would have to be insanely turbo to ever want to play this. This supporter sucks. We're not gonna read it. This supporter sucks. We're not gonna read it. We got the Fighting Milk. You may use this card only if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent. Heal 60 damage from one of your Pokemon. I think this is a good heal card. It's a good heal card. Some kind of comeback deck. Kappa Raja. I don't know. You're big. You're tanky. Heal some damage. Wigglytuff EX. It's another one. Once again, a little bit of healing can go a long way when you have that much HP. So, Fighting Milk, definitely could see it happen. We've seen a lot of weird healing cards be really good over the past like season or two. So with like Stone Journer and Capacious Bucket and all that, with not Capacious Bucket, the flip coin. You guys know what I'm talking about. Flip a coin of heads, or heal 20, flip a coin of heads, heal 20, repeat, or put it back to your hand, repeat, repeat, repeat. We all had one tilting moment where our opponent got like 8, 9 heads in a row, of course, I'm sure. You guys know what I'm talking about, though. Yeah, weird healing cards have been more used, I think, than ever over maybe like the last 2 seasons. And Fighting Milk is a little bit less weird and kind of just seems like a decent healing card if you ever need to get that healing off. So definitely look out for the Fighting Milk. Giacomo, discard a special energy from each of your opponent's Pokemon. It's being up to, I've only seen this card be like hyped up against like Lugia and Mew, but I don't actually think it's that good at all. Some kind of weird control card maybe, but yeah, I don't think against Lugia or Mew this card is very good at all, to be honest. It's pretty mid. Great Ball got a reprint, still currently in the meta, but I guess it'll be in the meta for longer. Don't hate to see it. Great Ball's a pretty fine card. You're never trying to play Great Ball. It kind of just fills the niche of, I need more Pokemon search, and there's no more guaranteed Pokemon search. Okay, I guess Great Ball's being played. That's basically it. Grusha, draw cards until you have 5 in your hand. If you have no energy attached to any of your Pokemon, drop to you have 7 instead. I thought there might be some hope for this card in like a Qianpao deck, but after looking at the list that are doing well over in Japan, it looks like no one actually thinks this card is any good. Maybe sometime in the future in some kind of weird deck, like stuff like Night March and Lost March and Mad Party could maybe have taken advantage of a card like this. So we might be able to see like the Unity Wings deck that we didn't talk about at all because I don't think it's very good. It's kind of cool though. Could take advantage of a card like this, but yeah, obviously not great. Iona, probably the most impactful card from the set. Each player shuffles their hand and puts it on the bottom of their deck. Then each player draws a card for each of their remaining prize cards. It's a consistency card in the early game. It's a comeback card in the mid and late game. It is the card from the set for sure, and it seems to make Guardy broken from the results of the big tournaments we've seen in this format so far. So Iona's broken. Get 4 ASAP. It's gonna be, yeah, you're gonna be playing it in a lot of things. Actually, you'll be playing a lot of things initially. You'll be playing it in more things, I think, as the sets progress and we get more and more sets. I think Iona will become better and better and better. Practice Studio, the attacks of each player's stage 1 evolution Pokemon do 10 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. I mean, it's one of those things kind of like the Oricorio. It's just like if you're playing a stage 1 deck and you feel like you're always coming up 10 or 20 damage short on a 2-hit KO, Practice Studio might be the fix. It's just one of those cards that you never know when it's going to be good. I have no idea how to say this one, so I'm not even going to try. Heal 50 damage from 2 of your Pokemon. Once again, these weird heal cards, we've been seeing them be pretty good as of late in recent years, or a couple years. You guys know what I'm saying. I said it about the milk. I'm saying it about this one. Heal 50 from 2 of your Pokemon. Doesn't seem great, but you never know when that stacked up with a really high H Pokemon plus a fighting milk is going to make the difference. So, yeah, weird healing cards are weirdly good. Super Rod is shuffle up to 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy from your discard pile back into your deck. We've got the return of the aggressive item Pokemon energy recovery cards. Just got rid of Ordinary Rod not that long ago, and Super Rod is here to take its place, and I'm fine with it. Seems pretty good. It's going to be a broken card. One of the things that makes Guardy so much better is the Super Rod alongside the Iona. Not just the Iona itself. The Super Rod definitely makes a huge difference. Not even have to play Miriam or Clara anymore is a pretty big deal. So yeah, Super Rod, insanely powerful card. Item-based recovery, Pokemon recovery, energy recovery is always going to be really good no matter what. So yeah, Super Rod, no different here. Speaking of item-based recovery, this is only for energy, but this is a pure energy retrieval. This is a reprint from like back in 2013, 2014. I don't even remember. Discard 2 cards from your hand. Put 4 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. Qianpao, Baxcalibur will definitely be playing 4 of these, I feel like. I can't see you playing any less than 4. A lot of energy to be recovered. That's like a lot of resources to potentially utilize, and Baxcalibur, of course, utilizes it super well, being able to put all those water energy directly into play right as you recover them. So yeah, superior energy retrieval, going to be a good card for sure, and it's already seen play immediately alongside the Qianpao and the Baxcalibur. Jet Energy, a little bit of a niche energy card, special energy card here. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon that provides a colorless energy, and then when you attach it from your hand to one of your bench Pokemon, you switch that with your active Pokemon. So this can be utilized as a card in like the colorless Lugia build, just to kind of have like a pivot option, like a forced pivot option, and it combos pretty well with the Weird Deer, so you don't have to like retreat energy for turn. You can attach the Jet Energy, and that gets your Weird Deer into the active. And then we've seen it be played a little bit in Lost Zone decks, mostly Lost Tina, because it kind of combos with the Lost Tina's energy cost, or the Giratina's energy cost, but we've also seen it in other Lost Zone decks as well, and it kind of makes sense, like an extra Comfy for the turn, plus you retreat for the turn. Of course, that takes up your energy cost for the turn. So if you're trying to attack with like Greninja or something, that won't quite work. But if you're attacking with Cram, or if you're attacking with like Raikou, or even if you like gate to a Sableye, the Jet Energy kind of works out pretty well. So this one is, yeah, Jet Energy seems solid, nothing too ridiculous like the Reversal Energy. But first, we got to talk about that Luminous Energy. It provides an energy of any type, but becomes a colorless energy if you have another special energy attached to that Pokemon. So you're only being able to attach this by itself. And basically, we haven't seen a ton of play from this. This might be something that helps revive the Regis. I'm not going to hold out on that. But also, I think the biggest use we'll see out of this will probably be in Lugia to use it and combo it with the Radiant Charizard. Because Lugia can find the energy, any energy it wants pretty aggressively, get the Radiant Charizard, put the Luminous Energy on it. So we could see Lugia going back to kind of what it looked like a little bit more before rotation, where it kind of had everything. It can regain the use of Charizard through the Luminous Energy, and it'll also gain the use of the Reversal Energy as well. Reversal Energy, when you're behind on prize cards, becomes a triple energy of any type for evolution Pokemon that don't have a rule box. So gonna be able to use it on the Luxray, like I mentioned. You can use it on the Shining Arcana Gardevoir, and those are like the top two it's really being used for right now. But it might help revive some decks like Zorobox. There's a lot of attackers actually coming out in this set that are stage 1 Pokemon that take 3 energy to attack with, which of course combos with Reversal Energy. I think that's kind of the point. And Zoroark might be able to take advantage of some of those in the immediate meta. Of course, Zoroark has always had a tough time with Lost Box, and that might not change enough to actually make Zoroark a decent deck overall, but you never know. So Reversal Energy, super powerful card. Definitely going to be seeing play on release immediately. Like I said, Shining Arcana Gardevoir, the Luxray. Let's kind of stop there. Zorobox, if Zorobox can make a comeback, you'll see 4 of these in there for sure. And I think there's some potential for the Zorobox, definitely. And the last one is that Therapy Energy that combos with the Wigglytuff that we talked about earlier. Provides a colorless energy to the Pokemon it's attached to, and then the Pokemon that it's attached to can't be asleep, confused, or paralyzed. And if it's affected by one of these special conditions, it recovers from that special condition. So it can't be asleep, confused, paralyzed, recover from that special condition. Could be a cool 1 of or 2 of tech in Lugia if asleep, confused, and paralyzed are like ever good, because then you're asleep, confused, or paralyzed, and Archeops just searches it out of your deck, puts it on your Pokemon. You're no longer asleep, confused, or paralyzed. And that one of the strats that has been used in the past and currently a little bit to deal with Lugia is paralysis. So paralysis now, or Lugia now, has a way to get around the paralysis. And that is the final card I'm going to talk about here in my complete Paldea Evolved set review. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to give it a like. And if you guys need any Paldea Evolved cards or products, check out fullgripgames.com. Link is always in the description. And I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.